welcome back to Clarion River Brewing. It's time for Week 5 of the Chris Weibel Coaches Show. I'm Sean Fagan, joined by Clarion head football coach Chris Weibel. You're watching this live on the Clarion Golden Eagle Vision app as well as Stretch Internet, or you may be in the bar room with us, as there are many people here in the back room at Clarion River Brewing. Oh, look, Coach, might be getting shared on social media right now.
There we go.
There we go. See, it took a couple weeks to get going, but now we're finally getting that fan presence we really wanted. Yep. People want to take their pictures with us. They want to talk. Well, they want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to me.
Sure they do.
That's fine. That's okay. Well, Coach, let's talk about what's going on with the program. You're coming off of the PSAC West opener, a 14-9 win over the Gannon Golden Knights. And I told you earlier in the game, I said, we're going to talk all about that one. And you expressed cautious optimism about that.
Right.
I think we'll start off with this question. When you're finally getting into that conference season and you're playing these conference opponents that you see every year, and there's a degree of familiarity with them, what kind of challenges does that present whenever you're going against an opponent that you see every year? You know their tendencies. They know your tendencies.
Yeah, it is hard because, you plan on something, and we did. Saturday we planned on a certain defensive front, a certain coverage, and they come out something totally different. So we planned on what we've seen year after year after year, and even the past few weeks, what they've done, and they come out with a different front, a lot of pressure, a lot of blitzing that we had to hurry up and tweak some things and make sure we were able to handle, which was the reason we had a slow start on offense and not a great day on offense, because we didn't prepare for it.
Is there a degree of that old joke that I know that you know that I know that you know, where you almost outsmart yourself whenever you're going against a team you see every year like that?
You do. You try to say, well, if I was them, this is what I would do to us. But you got to kind of, I guess, tread lightly on that, and just, you have to go with percentages. You have to go with the breakdowns from the previous weeks and even the last year's game and the success or lack of that they had against us, and prepare that way. And if it ends up like this past Saturday where they come out in something totally different, we have to be able to adjust to it.
I think that one of the messages you can take from that, though, is that's why it's important to carve out an identity as a team, where you can look at a situation like that and you can say, you know what, they're going to look at at this, and they're going to look at this formation and that tendency. But at the end of the day, we're a team that does this, and we're going to go out there and establish ourselves as doing this or that. Through 4 games this year, what's your team's identity?
Well, we do basically the same stuff. We might have different personnel in there. I think the biggest thing with us is, people know what we do. We just have to get the right combination of players on the field. And I'm not talking about personnel. I'm talking about individual players. We're still trial and error period with, who needs to play the majority of snaps, who needs to come in for a few snaps. We're still trying to figure out that magic combination to be successful. And it is a little bit personnel, but it's not so much. It's more individual based.
Coach, last week, before the Gannon game, we talked about the challenges of dealing with their running game. Specifically, we talked about the challenge of dealing with Mark Jones, who was one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the nation last year. So for the second straight week, you held opposing running backs to a negative yardage. That's a little skewed because of the number of sacks you had against Gannon, which we can talk about as well.
Right.
But the number that stands out to me, you held Gannon running backs to 37 yards on 15 carries. As a coaching staff, that's got to be so gratifying when you see a team that was so great at running the ball last year that by the midpoint of the game, they gave up on establishing the run.
We have to be able to commit to something, and basically it's what they're good at. Obviously we knew that, with Marcus coming in, he was one of the best running backs in the league last year. So you have to prepare for the run and prepare to stop the run. And that's what we did, make them put the ball in the air. They threw for over 200 yards in the air, and that's why, because we stopped the run. But there's more room for error if you make people pass the ball. To me, it's easy to hand the ball off. So, make them put it in the air, and hopefully things don't go their way, and it worked in our favor.
There's something that, to me, seems more demoralizing when a team can establish the run, they can chew up consistent amounts of clock, and like you said, there's less margin for error. There's the old joke, I can't remember if it was Woody Hayes or Bo Schembechler, but the idea that 3 things can happen when you pass the ball, 2 of them aren't good. It's an oversimplification,
right.
But on some level, it's true. If you run the ball, you've minimized risk, and if you're getting 4 or 5 yards a carry, it can just suck the wind out of the other team because they can't change personnel, they can't rotate guys. It's a constant battering.
It is, so if you can stop the run and you can get to the quarterback when they pass, I think you got something going. And last Saturday, with our defensive front, with our D-line and our linebackers, and obviously even our secondary that, we're creating good coverage packages which allowed the defensive line to get to the quarterback. If you can stop the run, but you can get to the quarterback and hurry him or frustrate him or fluster him, then you're good. You got something going, and you can win a football game.
And we'll talk about that defensive front, maybe some of the specific players later. We've talked a lot about the defensive line the last couple weeks, so we might go in a different direction here tonight. But we'll talk about that defensive battle. That's what the game turned out to be. And there were a lot of penalties on the field.
Yes.
How would you characterize the penalty situation in that game? And over the course of the first 4 games, you've seen a lot of yellow flags flown in those first couple games.
There is, and the game's changing. There's holding every play. It's just if you get caught for it. So there's penalties every play. Again, you can't call them all, and there's only so many eyes with the officiating crew. It does get frustrating, when you see it and it's not called. But they're trained. They do a good job. They do the best job they can, and we got to understand. And I have to remember that, the stuff happens so fast. And they're not going to see everything. But this year we've had a lot. We've had a lot of flags. On the other team, and on ourselves at some point. That whether they're penalties or not. It is what it is. The game goes on, and we have to make sure we don't get the dumb penalties at the wrong time that can cost us the game.
Now, this may not be something that you can necessarily speak to. But, I heard an interesting conversation with a former NFL referee in the last couple days, and they talked about how in professional football, one of the challenges that they're going through right now is the idea of roughing the passer. And they're asking the referees, it's not a rule change, but it is a point of emphasis this year.
Correct.
Where they say, hey, look, we want you to call this by the letter of the law, as opposed to using your own common sense to determine, is that really what this penalty would be.
Right.
In the NCAA, the referees, I would assume, also have points of emphasis. Have you heard anything about different rules or different points of emphasis for this year that might be contributing to some of these flags early in the year?
Well, I think it's, personal fouls has always been a big one. We want to make sure people, are not creating personal fouls, and whether that's, calling attention to themselves or, punching or hitting after the play or after the whistle, that's always a point of emphasis. Targeting is a big thing in our league, and defenseless players. And I'm talking about the NFL. The quarterback is the most defenseless player on the team. Because they're looking downfield. They're not looking to get hit. They're not, so they're always blind, and that may be a reason why they're calling so many flags early in the season to maybe set the precedence of, hey, we're not going to deal with this, don't do it.
Absolutely. Hey, Coach, let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what happened in that game against the Gannon Golden Knights. We'll talk about maybe some of the key moments in the game, including one that I think doesn't get enough attention compared to some of the flashier moments in that game. Well, we'll be back after this short break. You're watching the Chris Weibel Show on the Clarion Golden Eagle Vision app and the PSAC Network. Welcome back to the Chris Weibel Show. Sean Fagan joined by Clarion head football coach Chris Weibel. Coach, we were talking about the win against Gannon. It was a 14-9 game, so a defensive battle throughout, and you knew that a couple splash plays were going to make a difference. Now, we'll eventually get to the Alec Heldreth strip sack. We will eventually get to the Javonte Seard to Dana Jackson touchdown pass. But the moment I want to talk about actually came just before that one. Your team had given up a safety on offense, and then you free kick the ball back to Gannon.
Right.
And you're in a situation where Gannon gets the ball back in your territory. You're losing now 9-7.
Right.
And that is a recipe for the game to begin unraveling. I guess, especially a game that had been so close to that point. But your defense gets a really big stop in that situation, especially that was a time when Gannon tried to reestablish the run with Marcus Jones, and they stood tall and they held strong on third down. Could you feel that momentum shift on the sideline when that stop occurred and they had to punt the ball?
Absolutely. That safety obviously was not good.
Not ideal.
Not ideal. That we weren't expecting that to happen, but it happened. And again, it goes back to what I talk about every week: short-term memory. And the defense went out there and they got it done. And, getting the ball in our territory, it's not easy. We battled a lot of field position Saturday, which is not easy. And the defense rose to the occasion and made stops. And we ended up changing the field a lot. Which helped us finally prevail and win. But the safety obviously hurt, and then obviously you kick it off from the 20. So they do get good field position. And the defense went out and got it done.
I think about, and I'm going to hit you with a very obscure reference, which you knowing me personally know I never do. Never make obscure references. But Gene Kranz, who was in NASA, you remember the movie Apollo 13,
yes.
Ed Harris played him. He talks about what toughness is, and toughness is doing the right thing even when it's hard. It has nothing to do with physicality necessarily. It's a mental toughness.
Right.
For your defense to show that mental toughness after that safety when it could have been deflating, and then on third down, they get the great jump, they force the penalty, and they still get the incompletion on the back end. That's mental toughness. That's getting something done in a situation where the situation wouldn't necessarily lead to success. And that's something that you've worked on with this team and building that culture, is being mentally tough.
Absolutely, and getting it done when it counts is what we talk about. Getting it done when it counts, and effort and heart. Effort and heart I talk about every day. Just give me the effort and have the heart and believe that you can get it done, as an individual and as a team, and as a defense or an offense. So the effort is the biggest thing, and from my guys, and they respond to that. They give effort consistently, even when they're tired and they don't want to give effort, they give effort. And that's the key. I think that's the key to successful teams, and that's the key to winning. And it showed this past Saturday, and we came away with a win. 14-9 is not a great score, when you're looking at a football game, but, a win's a win.
Absolutely. And you look at the drive that followed, not to bring up any more bad memories, but the very first play of that drive, you have another mishandled snap that gets called back on the offsides. And it sort of gave your offense the chance to take a deep breath and say, okay, that play didn't happen. Let's get it going. And that was really your best sustained offensive drive of the game. You go 86 yards, and you close it out with the touchdown pass from Javonte Seard to Dana Jackson. And that was the moment when I really noticed that the crowd had gotten into the game, and they were really fired up. Was that something you could sense on the sideline? You could.
The crowd, that even the sidelines were getting riled up. We got some celebration, warnings, celebration penalties.
I noticed that.
But I'm okay with celebration penalties, because excitement, keeps you going. That drive, though, was a good example when I talked to the team about, how penalties can keep drives alive, and it can cost you games or give you games. In this instance, last Saturday, it kept our drive alive, which ended up giving us the winning score. So it helped us win a game, but we could easily be on the other end of that, so that's why we got to make sure we're not doing certain things and make sure we're not getting personal fouls, we're not doing stupid penalties, and focusing all the time to make sure we're never on the other end of that.
Let's talk about that final defensive stand of the game. Gannon gets the ball back. They've got some time to put a drive together, and they get down into the red zone. But your defense holds strong, harassing quarterback Jason Dombaugh throughout that final drive. A couple big sacks. He made some nice plays to get the ball moving. When they did, there was a fourth down conversion early in that drive that kept it alive. We talk a lot about the defensive line, and not to take any credit away from them, because they had another great game with 5 sacks and a ton of tackles for loss.
Right.
Alec Heldreth, scored a touchdown.
Right, yeah.
But the linebacking core and the defensive backs bought those guys some time, too. It was a symbiotic relationship because they had the coverage, they were filling the holes, and we already talked about the run game was a non-entity for Gannon.
Absolutely. The defensive line, not to take anything away from them, they work so hard, and they're so good, and they do a great job every day, but the linebacking core, of hitting inside receivers and knocking them off their routes or holding them up, and the defensive backs by, having great coverage, being in the right spot. If the quarterback can't throw the ball, the defensive line's got a great chance, to get in there and make something happen. And that happened a lot Saturday, so everybody sees the defensive line. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to take anything away from them. They did a great job, and, I love them to death, but we can't forget about the other guys on defense, which helped in their cause.
And we're not even talking about a play that happened in the first half that turned out to be a huge play as well. The blocked field goal, and that was a combination. When it looked like it was Paul Blendinger and Saf Khan were the two guys that got that drive up the middle. And I didn't see specifically who got the hand on the ball. I think it was Paul.
It was Paul. Yeah,
that's what Paul. I thought. And but that sort of dedication on a special teams play, that sometimes people look at special teams and say, okay, whatever, it's not as important as the offense or defense, but it saved a score. Right. Nobody ever thinks about the special teams until something good happens or bad happens. In this chance, something good happens. Right,
and not even my players. They think the same way. Special teams is just special teams, where it's not. Special teams can win you games, lose you games. And again, a good example again was this past Saturday. That first blocked field goal, I think, led to the missed field goal later. Because it was, now you're in the kicker's head. And we had a block set up for Gannon specifically of where we wanted to come. It was up the middle. It was over a certain lineman. And they did it. They executed it. And Paul came through and got a hand on the first one. But again, that's going to be in the kicker's head the rest of the game. Which again helps.
This was another game, though, where if we're going to focus on some things to build on, the offense struggled to find its footing throughout. Again, you did put together the one scoring drive. But from your standpoint, as a longtime offensive coach, what are the things that are holding the offense back that they need to build on here as the season goes on?
Again, I think it's just finding that magical, personnel. And it's individuals. We're playing a lot of wide receivers. You can see that by how many guys catch passes every game for the past few weeks. So we got to find out. We got to wait and see which guys separate themselves from the other guys and say, I deserve to play more. I deserve to play the whole game. Put me in, stuff like that. So, and then you can start getting more consistency, because the more guys you play, the less consistency you're going to have, because everybody's different. And that's including the quarterbacks. We've been playing a couple quarterbacks, every week, because, we're looking for the consistency of one or the other. And when we get that, then maybe we'll decide on, okay, here's what we're going to do. But until that happens, we have to keep, playing a bunch of guys, and it includes quarterback, to make sure we can figure out that magic solution of, that magic personnel group of who we need to have on the field.
Hey, Coach, let's take one more break. When we come back, we'll look ahead to the Seton Hill Griffins coming up this Saturday. You're watching on Clarion, Golden Eagle Vision, and the PSAC Network. It's the Chris Weibel Show. Welcome back to the Chris Weibel Show. Sean Fagan joined with Clarion head football coach Chris Weibel. Looking ahead now to the Golden Eagles matchup this weekend. You're on the road again, and you've got the Seton Hill Griffins. They're 0-4 on the season, but that is a team that can light up the scoreboard, and that's been their identity for many years now.
It has, and on offense, they have weapons. You know, they can score. They have probably one of the fastest wide receivers in the conference. They have a running back that's probably one of the top running backs in the conference, and they have a really big O-line. You know, and you say they're 0-4, but you know, look at the teams they've played. You know, they played Westchester, who's 4-0. You know, they played Slippery Rock, who's 3-1. They played Virginia Union, who's 2-1 now. And I think they played East Stroud, who's 1-3.
East Stroudsburg, yep.
Right. So, I mean, they've played some really good teams, you know, and that's why I keep, you know, communicating that to our team, to my team, that, you know, they've played good teams, you know. If you look at who we played, to be honest with you, other than Ship, you know, the other three teams we played have a 1-win record, you know, so we got to make sure we're not setting ourselves up for anything, and we got to make sure we understand we're going in and playing against a very good football team, you know, and they can score, you know, so we got to make sure we're ready for it.
And you hit the nail on the head. The game against East Stroudsburg was very high scoring. The game against Westchester wasn't, but that's just what Westchester's been doing to teams this year, shutting them down.
Not just them.
And in Slippery Rock, that was a one-score game for a long time, and Slippery Rock didn't pull away until the second half.
Right.
But, you know, that was a game that was very uncomfortable for Slippery Rock at times. They've got a receiver that you probably alluded to here, Ardell Brown. He's got 6+ catches in every game this year. He's got 112 yards or more in every game this year. He's averaging 140 receiving yards per game.
Correct.
He's not a huge guy.
No.
But he absolutely terrorizes opposing secondaries.
He can fly. He can run. They say speed kills. It does. If you can run and your quarterback's got some time to wing it, then you can get something done. And he can run. So we got to make sure we get hands on him. We give him a little room. We play certain things. To make sure we can take him away. And hopefully our defensive line can get to the quarterback, but again, across the front, I think, and their offensive line, they're probably a 300 to 310 pound average across the front, if not more. So they're big guys. So we're going to have to make sure we're doing certain things and using speed to get to the quarterback and hopefully get hands on him and the other receivers, so we can make something happen before he can get open.
They sort of profiled the same way last year. They were a high-scoring offensive team, and one of the ways that you countered that was controlling the game with the run game on offense. Kyle Evans had over 100 yards rushing in that game, and just generally speaking, you had a good day rushing the football. That's got to be a point of emphasis, I would think, for this week, especially when you go on the road. You got the opposing crowd to deal with.
Right.
Always want to establish the run.
The best defense versus a high-scoring offense, is controlling the football. If we can control the football with the run, get first downs, then we're going to be okay. If we get stalled on offense, it's going to be another defensive battle. To hopefully they can hold up their own. But we have to be able to control the football, win time of possession, and get first downs. That's how we're going to beat high-powered offense.
Well, Coach, I'd like to thank you for joining me here again for our weekly show. I'd like to thank Jared Sullenberger for producing tonight's show. I'd like to thank all of our fans joining us here in the back room at Clarion River Brewing. And I'd like to thank all of our fans watching at home, either live on the Clarion Golden Eagle Vision app or on the PSAC network. We'll be back here next Wednesday at 7 o'clock for the next edition of the Chris Weibel Show. But before that, Golden Eagles will be on the road at Seton Hill. That game will kick off at 4 p.m. on Saturday. You can find the Watch It Live links on ClarionGoldenEagles.com. Once again, for head coach Chris Weibel, I'm Sean Fagan saying thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.